Hello, I hope you're good. We can just continue. So we are under the SQL syntax. Of course, the syntax just give us, as I mentioned, that the snippet of how a specific command line looks like and how you're supposed to work with. Yeah. So a database most often contains one or more tables. Yeah, in most cases we have more than one table. Each table is identified by its name. For example, you can have a table with customers information and then another table contains the orders that have been made in a specific or in a certain store. So those are two tables, and of course you can have more. Then we have a table contains records, as I mentioned, as rows with data. So this is just how a syntax look like. We're going to be writing command lines. For example, we have select, then we use asterisk. I'll talk about the asterisk in a few, and then from employees. Yeah, this is the table that we have. Yeah, then under the SQL statement, you have most of the action you need to perform on the database are done with SQL statements. Okay, and these are some of the included commands that we're going to be working with. One, we have the select statement. We have mentioned about it earlier on, and the select statement is used to extract data from a table. When you talk about select, you're selecting a specific column, yeah, or entries from an already existing table. That's what we talk about retrieving. So we're extracting data from a database. We have updates. It updates data in a table. Yeah, you can update someone's name, you can update their ages, and so on. We have delete. You can delete data from a table. Remember, I've said deleting a table. Of course, we're going to see how to delete a table. So we use delete to delete data from a table. Insert to insert new data into a database. We have create database. So these are commands. We're going to be writing select, we're going to be writing updates, we're going to be writing delete, and then the other information follows. We have alter database, to modify a database, to make changes to a database. We have create table, to create a new database. Yeah, we have alter table. Yeah, to alter table is to modify a table. We have said to modify a database, we use alter database. To modify a table, we use alter table. We have drop table, to delete a table. To delete a data, we said we use delete, but to delete a table, we're using drop table. We have create index, to create an index, and drop index, to delete an index. So these are commands, some of the commands that we're going to be using. Yeah, we have the SQL operators that are included that we're going to be using in one area or another. For example, we have my SQL arithmetic operators, and we have the operator themselves and the description. We have the add sign, we have the subtract, we have multiplication, we use the asterisk, we have slash for division, and the percentage for modulo. Modulo is when you're talking about the remainder of a specific division. We have my SQL bitwise operators. We have the bitwise and, we use this one. Of course, we have the and function. We're going to be seeing it in a few, but for me, bitwise, we use the and sign. We have the slash, one slash, straight one for or, and we have the lace for bitwise or, exclusive or, the power button, the power sign, sorry. We also have my SQL comparison operator. When you talk about comparison, means you're comparing between two variables or more. We have the equal sign, we have the greater than, we have the less than sign, we have greater than, equal to, less than, equal to, and not equal to. We use the less than, greater than for not equal to. Those are comparison operator. I'll be sharing the notes with you as soon as possible. We have my SQL logical operators. Remember, I've mentioned about the bitwise. For For example, in the logical operator, we have the all. It's true if all the subqueries value meets the condition. So here we're working with conditions. We have the and if all the conditions separated by and are true. We have any, we have between, we have exists, we have in, we have like, not, or, and some. So these are logical operators, and you can see in each we have a description of the output that we expect. Yeah, we have the not displays all records. Okay, let's just go through them. We have said all returns true if the subquery value meets the condition. The and returns true if all the conditions separated by and are true. We have any, it returns true if all the subquery values meets the condition. We have between, true if the operand is within the range of a comparison. So for example, if you're comparing, you want to extract data that whereby the ID or the age is between 20 and 25, so use between. We have exist, it's true if the subquery returns one or more record. Yeah, so you want to confirm whether a specific table exists, or so on. We have in, true if the operand is equal to one of a list of the expression. Then we have like, true if the operand matches a pattern. Of course, we're going to be using the like when we're creating something we call a wildcard. We're going to use the like. We have not, it displays a record if the condition is not true. So we're checking whether you're excluding something from an output. We have or, true if the condition separated by or is true, one of them is true. Then we have some, returns true if any of the subquery value meets the condition that have been specified. We have my SQL comments. And comments are used to explain a section of SQL statements or to prevent execution of SQL statements. For example, when we are going to be beginning, we're going to be starting with on how to create table. So we're going to be writing comments, and this is how to write a comment. You can use a single line comment, whereby single line comments start with these minus signs, two of them, and then you space. You have to space after the two signs so that it becomes a comment. We're going to see in a few. We have any texts between this sign and the head of the line will be ignored. So any information within the SQL query area that have this sign is going to be treated as a comment, so it won't be executed. This is where you write a question. If you want to run a question, you can write it down and then try to extract it, or to execute a specific line of command or a heading. If you want to just give more details of what you're writing in down below, you can write a comment. An example you can see we have here, we have multiple line. If you have multiple lines of command, you can multiple line command start with a slash, then asterisk, and ends with asterisk, then slash. So let's see how to write comments. I'll just go back to SQL. So let me delete this. So you have said we're using minus sign. You write two of them. If I start typing information, it won't be a text. You can see it's black and it's telling me there's an error that already exists. So what you're supposed to do is you type the minus sign, both of them, then you space. You hit the space bar, so that any type of information you're going to be typing, it will be treated as a comment and not as a command. Yeah, that is when you're writing a comment for one line. Let's talk about if you want to write line 2 or more lines of command. We have said you're using slash, asterisk, and you cross with the same. So you start with slash, then asterisk, then you type the whole line of command. If I click enter and then continue typing, it will be treated as a continuation of the previous comment, and the same continues. So what is expected of me is to close the already existing command or comment. You use the asterisk and then slash. I'll use asterisk and then slash. So if I click enter and type anything else, it is treated as a command line. Yeah, so yeah, that's how we go about it. You can write one line of comment as a comment, and you can write multiple lines of comments as long as you separate them with an asterisk, then a slash in between the information that you are writing. I hope we are together at that. That's on the comment area. Then we have basic SQL queries, yeah, as we already did. So we're going to begin by learning how to create a database. Yeah, we're going to be creating our first database, as we are going to look into more as we progress. So I'll go back to SQL. Let me just delete the existing line of commands. So we said earlier that a database in an organization of, or a collection of organized data that can be easily managed and accessed, and managed. Yeah, so we are going to be creating our first database. Remember, we say this is a database. This says in our schema area here, this is a database, and any database contains this icon, cylinder-like icon. That's for database. So we want to create a database, give it a name, and go, of course, see how to work with it. Yeah, as earlier mentioned, we said to create a database, we use the command create. Yeah, we use the command create and create database rather, and you're able to create a database. So we're going to write a command. In most cases, it's always advised you write commands in caps lock, so that you separate, you're able to see the difference between SQL commands and your keyed in values. But of course, they're going, of course, to be differentiated by the color. For example, if I type create, remember we said it's not case sensitive, so I'll just type create database, and you can see the keyword pop up. Yeah, that means you're typing the right thing. So you can select on the pop-up name, again you're also good to go. So create a database, of course, give it a name. Let's call it students, no, class. You can call it, yeah, you can call it class. I'm just going to type it in lowercase. So I've created a database, and the name of the database is class. That's why it's in black. But create database, this is an SQL command. That's why it's in blue. And of course, another thing that we mentioned is very important is separating a command line with a semicolon. Let me show you why. If I go on, for example, I've created the database and probably I want to see the database, yeah, that whether it already exists or whether they exist. I'll key in next, just key in enter, and then type the command for viewing the database, show database command. Show database. That's a command, a complete one, but it's having an error. That's anytime you have a line of command with the next sign before it, it means that line of command contains an error and you need to edit it. Yeah. So the reason we are having an error or this warning message here is because our first command line where we created the database, we didn't close it, we didn't edit. So SQL is treating the show database as a continuation of the first line of command. So to remove or to avoid the error, make sure you have semicolon after class. I've added semicolon and now I don't have any error. Okay, let me just add another semicolon after show database. Yeah. Okay, let me see. Just a minute. Show database. Show databases, not database. Let me just add an S. Yeah, it's okay. So even if I don't have the semicolon, I'm not having any error with or without semicolon after the second line of command. What will happen is that without the semicolon now in the second line, it will affect the line of command that follows, not the current one, but the one that follows. That's why anytime we don't have a semicolon in the first line of command, it affects the second line. And if I add the semicolon, the error is moved because we have solved the first one. So I'll just run the command create database. Make sure you have the semicolon, and we say that we are running using this slash, these two flashlight icon, and we say the first one. If I run the first one, it will execute create database and also execute database. It will execute show databases. Yeah, but if I execute the second command, it just execute create database. That's why I said we're going to be mostly using the second one because we're going to executing a specific line of command. So I'll run it, click on it, and it was a success. So down here in our output area, we have a tick, green light. It tells you that that line of command was successful. Otherwise, you'll get a red cross sign, and the message in here will tell you where the error is. Yeah. Okay, before I continue, someone might confirm. Hello, Sandra, can you hear me?
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to confirm whether I'm audible. Thank you for that. So we're going to run our second line of command where we have show database. Of course, you understand a database, what it is, and we have one here. We have created another here. So I ran the second line. It was a success, and now I have the information about show database information. So I'm having database that are included in my area here. For example, I have class. This is the database I already created, database called class. Yeah, and then we have another called sys. We have information schema, MySQL. We have performance schema and sys. Yeah, so these are the databases that are already existing in my schema here. We can see sys is visible. We have created class but still not visible on our schema. So this is how to make sure so that you are able to use a database. You can make it visible and then you make sure it's highlighted. So just where we're having the name schema, to the end we have motion like arrows. I hope you can see them where my my cursor is, my mouse is. So if you click on it, it refreshes the schema area. So I'll just click on it, and now you can see after the refresh, I'm having class and sys. Class is the database that I've created. Of course, it doesn't contain anything. If I expand on class, I don't have anything. I don't have even a button for expanding table because there's no table that exists. So it's just empty. It's just a database and does not contain any details. So we're going to be adding that. Another way to refresh the schema, you can just right click. Is it right? Yeah. You have you right click on your on any point at this schema area, then we have refresh all. Yeah, still is another way of refreshing the schema. Yeah, you refresh the schema so that you're able to see the included type of databases that have been created in your schema area. The other command which is very important is use, then the name of the database. For example, we are working with the class database. We use the function use and then the name of the database. In this case, we have class. You realize we're having an error. It's because we didn't add semicolon after show database. So if I add that, my command is correct. So it's always good to add a semicolon after every line of command once it's complete. So I'm creating use class. That means I want to use the database class. This is the reason why we use the command use class. When I will be creating a table, I don't want to create a table within sys. I want to create a table within class database. So I have to run the command use class, or we can use the next command that I'm going to be showing you. So let me just execute use class. One thing you'll note, the class database is expanded and also highlighted in black. It's bold black other than the way it was earlier. Yeah, so that's how. For example, probably I want to change from class to sys. I can either run the command use sys, the database name, or I can just double click on the sys. Let me just double click on sys, and sys is highlighted. You can see now class is not bold. The bold is in sys. So you can either double click on you can run the command use class, and then you'll have, or rather use then the database name. You are able to see the database highlighted. So what will happen when I create or I store data in the class database, or I create a table, it will be stored in the class database. Yeah, it will be stored in the class database. So let's learn how to create a table. Yeah, let's create a table. We have created a database. Of course, you can create as many databases as possible. I'll give you an example of creating a database. We have created a class database. Yeah, you can have a database about an institution. Of course, we're using class, but of course in this class we can go ahead and store data about the student. We can go ahead and create another table, data about the instructor, the units, the lessons, and so on. When you talk about the institution, we are going to have a database that stores data about the students, that one, the units, their departments, the lecturers, and so on. In the financial institution, you can have a department, the employee's name, you have their salaries, and so on. Yeah, so those are databases, but the tables within them is, of course, for example, in a financial area, when I talk about a department, that's a table by itself. When I talk about the employees, that's a table storing data about employees alone. Yeah, so a number of tables, then we have our database created. So I'll just hit enter and create a table within the class database. Remember, we have already said use the database class, so all we need to do is now create tables. Yeah, and to create a table we use the command create table. So I'll just run the command create table. You can use lowercase as well. Yeah, we usually use uppercase for consistency, but we said SQL is not case sensitive, so it won't you won't get any error. So once you write the command create database, create table, you give the table a name. Yeah, let's say we want to create a table about students, so we are going to call this table students. Yeah, you create table and then the table name. That's the syntax. Create table, then table name. Yeah, the next thing that we're going to do, we're going to open brackets, and then now specify the columns within the table. For example, we can have name as our first column. Name, I earlier mentioned that, or you can just call it names, one and the same. Let me just say first name just to make the difference. First underscore name. Another key thing that you're supposed to note is that in SQL we don't space. For example, name, the table of the name, the table name, the column name, the database name, any name, you don't space. We use underscore to separate if it's a two name or more than two name. Yeah, so we use underscore. So I'm creating first name, and the other thing I'm supposed to do is specify the data type. Probably someone, just a volunteer, you can help us. Just try. What's the volunteer? What's the data type for first name? You can just unmute. Hello, if you can hear me. What's the data type for first name? Yes.
I think the variable.
Okay, you can go ahead, Bir.
I think we can use a variable character.
Okay, what about you, Paul?
Yes, I was for the same.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That's true. First name, of course, is a string type of data type, and we say that since we don't have any fixed variable length, we are going to go for the variable character, and we write the data type varchar. Varchar, you can see the pop-up here, varchar, and then you are supposed also to specify the length. Yeah, so I'll open another bracket, and within this bracket I specify the length of first name, so it can be as long as, let's say, 50 characters. So I'll just write 50 and close the brackets. I'll add a comma. You can have first name, last name. Let's go ahead and work with first name for now. We can have age. It's another column. We have the first column for first name, the second column will be about age. So I'll just type age. So Kevin, what's the data type for age?
It's an integer.
Okay, true. It's an integer. For integer, we say we use int for integer. In some points, you may not be required to specify the length of an integer, but just in case you experience an error, just go ahead and specify the length. It will solve the error that you might be experiencing at that point. Otherwise, I'll just add a comma. That's on the integer category. You can just yeah, you can just work with those two. Probably we would have started with ID. Let me just add ID. So before first name, I'll add ID. I'll just type ID, and then the data type for ID. Sandra, what's the data type for ID? ID number, that is.
I'd say integer as well.
Yes, it's an integer, so I just type int, add a comma, and I'm good to go. So we are having I've just moved my mouse here so that I just added ID. Specify the data type is integer. I'm having first name is a variable character and age is an integer. So let me just add semicolon. You can see at the end of the integer I'm having like an error. Yeah, so I've said just in case you experience, because you can see the cross sign, that means this command has an error. What I'm going to do is add the length. Sometimes it won't have any issue, but just in case you can just specify the length. For example, the length of an age can be probably 5 characters. Let's put a maximum of 10. Yeah, so we have created a variable. Where am I having an error? Oh, I need to add. Okay, probably maybe it's not the length that was affecting the brackets. Yeah, you can see the bracket was what was affecting. You can add the length. I've said you can add the length just in case it gives you an error, but because we already earlier started with these brackets just before ID, you have to close it. And in case you add the length, for example, let's say the 10 I already added, I also have to add the closing bracket, not for the 10 but for the first bracket that already existed, so that I can solve the error. So for the age, sometimes you may have the error, sometimes it may not. About the length, in case you get an error, just specify the length. Otherwise, make sure you have the equal number of brackets at the end of the command line. So our line of command is okay, so I'm just going to run that. So we are creating a table, and this table we are creating it in the class database. Reason being, it's because you can see it's the class database that's highlighted bold, so that means that's the current database that we're using. Then we have our command line, create database, create table, and we are creating a table called students, and the table contains an ID, first name, and age. These are the columns: first ID, first name, and age. So I'll just execute that. Remember, we are executing using the second execute tab. I run that. Okay, I'm having a warning. Okay, the command is successful. The command line is successful, but I'm having a warning: integer displayed with width. And the funny thing is that anytime you run a command and it's successful, you can't run it twice. You can't create two tables called students. Okay, I can see the length is affecting because of the length. Let me just remove it and run. Let's see. This is what I'm having. I'm having an error in my command line for create table, and the warning is table student already exists. So you can create a table. In short, each table should have a unique name. So you can see our table student already exists. Yeah, so let's run our last command, and the command is select. We have been talking about select, and then we're going to be using asterisk. What asterisk is used for is used to mean all. For example, you want to select all the column within the student table, so you use asterisk. Yeah, otherwise if you're specifying a column, you just type the name of the column. Otherwise, want to have the list of all the students details in this case. So I'm selecting all from, where are we selecting this? Okay, let me just type with my from, select all, asterisk for all, from students is the table. if you type the student name wrongly, for example, I type a student, I'll get an error. I'll just run that. The error is table class student. The reason I'm having class is because it's the database. So class and then student table name does not exist. So you must type the correct name for your database. Close the semicolon. So I'll just execute that. It's successful. This is the output I'm having. The result grid, it tells me that the student table contained ID column, first name and age. No entries yet. We haven't inserted anything, and we're going to learn how to insert data within a database. Otherwise, that's how we create a table. You create a database, you use the command use class to select the database, or you can just double click on it, and then you have gone ahead and created a table using the create table command. The table is students, and within the students table we have these columns: ID, first name and age. Anybody having a question? Any question about the current lines of command, or anybody experiencing any errors and they don't understand what's the reason? Okay, I hope we are all good on that. So that's where we are supposed to, we're going to be ending our class, and then on tomorrow's lesson we're going to learn to get to run more advanced queries. So just in case you have an error with the already existing one, reach out. For Matthias, kindly remind me tomorrow so that we're able to install the SQL, MySQL on your Mac, and able to, so that if when you come to advanced queries you won't be left behind. Yeah, so tomorrow we're going to be working on more advanced queries. Otherwise, that's it for today. Unless anybody's having a question, have a nice evening.